Hey guys, so tomorrow we're taking the car to Florida. I live in Oklahoma. It's quite a drive. But before we do that, we have a dual pump set up in this car. I say we, I guess I do. I have a dual pump set up in this car. So one of the pumps on the dyno gave out, and we were limited to 28 psi. When we really want to be running something like 35, 37 psi. So, what I'm going to do now, I just got the fuel pump in from Jordan at Defined Performance, and what I'm doing now is I'm trying to burn some gas. I've got, we're at E70, so I've got about 3/4 of a tank left, and ideally I'd want like a half a tank or less, just so you're not spilling fuel everywhere when you do this. So we're driving around killing some time. Just got this new camera mount for the trip, so we're gonna see how this works. And we got like 30 minutes right now to burn some gas, so that's what we're gonna try to do. So we're gonna be doing some pulls and testing out the camera mount and doing a couple things, and then later tonight we're gonna try to swap out that fuel pump. It's usually a pretty simple swap, but we're gonna show you kind of how the Radium dual hangers put together and how like a hop switch works, and the ideal way to use the hop switch for a second fuel pump. So we're gonna do that, and you guys just enjoy the video. Alright, so here's the Walboro 450. We have two in the tank. One of them crapped out. Basically the one that clips on, it turns on under boost on a hop switch. It's kind of old, and we figured out it wasn't putting fuel into the system like it should. So we're going to replace it, and we're going to kind of walk you through how to do that. And maybe if you don't have a Radium hanger and you're interested in installing one or something, that'll kind of help you visualize the process of messing with them. So we're gonna get started. Alright, so first we're gonna remove the 4 screws that hold this plate over the fuel pump assembly. You're gonna have to do this any kind of fuel pump you remove. Just like in the cooking videos, I've already unscrewed those. So we're gonna first, got all these wires, and we've already wired all our pump stuff. So for me, I'm gonna undo these A&N fittings, and then I'm gonna mark all these wires to make sure I get them back where they go, because I really don't want to mess with that later. So we've got, pump 1, pump 2, our fuel level sensor, and a couple other little things that we got to make sure are wired up correctly. So we're gonna get those marked off and noted, and we'll continue from there. Alright, we've marked all of our wires so we can put them back in the right spot, which is very important. So we're going to take off all these little caps that hold down the wires. There's going to be, what, 2, 4, 6, 8 of them. Don't lose them. They're black and easy to lose. And we're doing the wires first because you open up the fuel tank and then start hooking up wires or taking them off. Now of course we unplugged our battery, but let's just say something crazy happens. We don't want to spark and blow up our car. So order of operations for safety there. Alright, we've got all of our little wires off, I believe, all of our connectors. We're going to go ahead and inspect these. Some of these get bent up. Just trying to get these plugged on. So all our wires are out of the way, and the next thing we're going to do is take off these A&N fittings. So that's what's next. And I'm popping into that. Fun fact, using a box wrench makes it pretty easy. Turn the fitting though. Now when you're doing this, you want the least amount of gas in the tank possible. I mean, you don't want to run it dry, but you do want gas in the tank, or you don't want that much gas in the tank, because when you pull this fuel basket out, all this gasoline will, or fuel, let's say fuel, we'll just make it more hard, more messy. You're gonna get gas in your car, it's gonna smell for a couple days. So you just want to avoid that if you can. If you're like me, your wife rides in your car and then she's like, "What's that stupid smell?" And you're like, I spilled gas in my car." So you don't want to do that. Don't be that guy. That's our fuel temp sensor there. So we're going to get these A&N fittings off and go from there. Alright, next we've got these, 10 screws or 8mm that hold the pump assembly into the gas tank. You can see there's quite a bit of fuel that comes out when you undo these things. So maybe have a towel, or just rock the fuel smell, because race car, whatever you want to do. We're going to get this pump assembly out. I'll show you how that Radium hanger looks and how you go about putting in a pump on it. Alright, so we've got all the bolts holding in this pump assembly off. It's hardest part's getting all your fittings and stuff out of the way, honestly. Take this guy off. Don't lose that. And we're going to pull our pump right out. Now, there's going to be a lot of fuel in this basket. See, we had a half tank left and this thing is almost still pretty full, actually, so that's kind of unfortunate for me, not for you guys, because you can't smell this crap. But there is a little bobble on the bottom of this thing where you can drain the canister, at least. The biggest trick here is to not get your fuel level sensor screwed up on the way out, which is very easy to do. And sometimes, if you're lucky like me, the whole thing just looks like it comes completely off of your assembly, but that's not a bad fix. That just pops right back on there. So we'll get that out and fix that. Alright, so this is the pump assembly that comes out of your car, or when you get it. This is the dual pump hanger. Yeah, you know, I was saying, this just comes right off. It's really cool how that just works. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these two bolts, and then there's 4 over here that we're gonna just undo with an Allen key. Takes a little bit of time because Allen head sucks. And then the whole assembly will lift out. So we'll get all 4 of those out. So we got the we got 6 bolts out. You can see this just removes right out of this canister, and it's got your 2 fuel filters there. That's kind of gross looking. Let me go ahead and change that out if I've got a spare. And so a problem is pump 2. This is our pump 2 here, and this is an older one. I had this one for a while, which is part of the problem. So we're gonna pop this out, and to remove that, it's just 4 more little bolts. Now there's 2 here. There's 1, and basically 2 on each side that you just pull out, and then this lid will separate, and then we'll work on seating this hose back, or this pump back in the fuel pump assembly. More bolts. All right. Okay. So we've got this assembly. This metal bracket comes off. Now we get to remove a filter, which usually isn't too bad to do. Sometimes they're kind of not happy to leave their fuel pump home, so you gotta get a screwdriver, which is what we're gonna have to do. Got the old pump out. Here's a new pump. Looks like they've updated the design a little bit, but same product number, so we know we're putting a 450 back in, and not like a 280 or whatever. So take your old one, throw it away. Make sure you don't use it by accident later, and we will get our new pump set up to go back in our assembly. Alright, so our main assembly is back together. If you want to see that, let me get a little close up of it. Alright, so you got the main assembly back together. You see both our pumps are back in. Make sure you tighten these fuel clamps because there's quite a bit of pressure there, and so they need to be pretty tight. And then make sure everything's lined up on the bottom. Make sure by the time you're done that these little lips sit where they're supposed to sit. Put your filters back on, and then now it's time to put it in the larger assembly. Alright, gotta put this guy back in. It's kind of a pain to get things happy again because there's these little screw inserts there, and I noticed that you bump into them. So it takes a little finagling, especially with your fuel filters. And missing all this stuff down there. So don't give up, keep trying, make sure you succeed, and if you don't, then take it to a professional. Now we've got this, we're going to put our bolts back in where they go to hold the assembly back together, and then it's time to put it back in the tank. Alright. So if you'll notice, this pump has a, it's on camera here, has a little emblem. It shows your hood scoop up front, because we're Subaru people. So your hood scoop goes up front, so the front of the vehicle is where the hood scoop is, and the back of the vehicle is the back of the car. It's not just a hood scoop, it's actually a picture of a WRX or STI. We'll say STI. So trick is just make sure you clear the fuel level sensor, and then make sure all your wires are not in the way. That's pretty much the two hardest things to do. You can do that, then this is super easy. The other problem is these gaskets get old. There's a rubber gasket around here, so if your car's got a couple years on it and you're doing this, go ahead and change the gasket. They're like $10. And if you got a Radium hanger, you just spent like $500 something. So just change the gasket. It's worth it. Make sure there's nothing underneath the gasket. In fact, this one's been cleaned recently because this was done not too long ago, but go ahead and lift up the gasket and clean underneath it. A lot of grime and stuff gets underneath there because this gas tank is actually open to the air underneath your car, so it gets a lot of junk that comes up and lands on top of it. So we've got our fuel pump in, and the next goal is to put our locking ring on top, and you want to make sure you get that right. There's these little kind of bumps that go in that gasket right there. And you want to make sure that this has extra holes right here, right there, there, and there. And those little extra gasket holes should line right up. It's not too hard. So just kind of put it on. And then kind of wiggle it around, get it all happy. And you're going to kind of have to, those nipples on that gasket, or whatever you want to call them, little cones that hold it into this ring, they're kind of a rubber cone shape, so they don't want to go all the way through, so you kind of got to grab them and pull them up to make sure that they go. Now you got your ring on, go ahead and check for wires, anything that might be keeping this from going all the way down, because it's real easy to have a piece of whatever get stuck in there, and then you fill up your gas tank and you have a big puddle under your car at the gas station, and people think your car is busted. It's because it is. So we've got this done. Next we're going to go ahead, we've completely disconnected the battery, so we'll probably hook up our pump power for one, pump 2, and our fuel temp sensor and our fuel level. This car actually uses a different fuel temp sensor. This one's just hooked up so we don't have an error code. So we've marked all those here, here, here. So that's kind of our next step after we put the, I don't know what are they, the bolts that hold the ring down onto the pump and seal the tank. So we're going to do that next. And since it's a circle, we're going to use our trusty star pattern that everybody uses for anything circle with bolts. And you don't want to tighten one down all the way. You kind of want to ease it down kind of evenly as possible, so it doesn't just seal over on one side and then you've got kind of a weird gap on the other side. It just seems like it works out more to have them all kind of ease down at about the same pace. The other thing is we didn't really show you a whole lot of wiring. This setup is already wired up. This pump 2 is on a hop switch, which is basically a switch with a pressure reference that turns on when you hit whatever you've turned it to. Mine's set at a 7 psi to kick on and have my second pump be on. And so, one little hint, hop switches, because I know when I had to do it, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there. There was a lot of differing information. What I did is I ran power to a relay, and then the hop switch is actually in the ground to the relay, so that you're not running power through your hop switch, it's just grounding the relay, and that will kick on your pump, rather than running a power wire straight through the hop switch. It seems to be working pretty well, other than my second pump died. So we're gonna get this buttoned up and work on reconnecting our stuff. Do not do this with either part of your battery plugged in. A lot of people just do the negative terminals. That's fine, but when you're doing this kind of stuff and you've probably wired it yourself, you don't want to accidentally ground a wire and then boom, all of a sudden you've got power. You shoot yourself in the face with fuel, or you're freaking or you're blowing yourself up. So let's not have some terrorism-free car work, please. Where is my other one? Where's my super suit? Where's pump 2 negative? That's a negative, that's our ground. Where's our other negative? Bro.
If it was in your boat, you'd know it.
You would know it?
If you would know it, I wouldn't know it. Maybe I would know it.
Fuel pressure passenger. Fuel level passenger. Pump 2 negative. There she is. As long as it went that way. I'm so glad I marked these. everything's hooked back up the way it should be. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna hook up the battery. These pumps are hardwired. Well, the first one is. We're gonna hook up the battery and test each pump to make sure we're not leaking anywhere. And we will see how that works and then zip it back up if there's no problems. Alright guys, we're gonna turn the key on, prime the first pump, and then we're gonna check, see if it leaks. We didn't put the lid back on. Thank you, steering wheel, for making it look like a clip. No immediate leaks. Let it go for a little bit. Make sure you have the right pump. You can feel the flow out of the nozzle for pump 1. So we don't have any leaks. Looking good. What we'll do is we'll just go ground the hob switch manually. And that should turn on the second pump. Alright, so here's our hob switch. I've seen people put lines off of them and run them into like a boost block or whatever. I just tapped the NPT fitting straight into the manifold because that was just less of a hassle for me. Alright, so this is our ground coming from our relay. And then this is just our ground to this. These manifolds are pretty grounded. So what we're going to do, I'm going to unhook this ground. We're going to switch this over to the normally open peg on our hob switch, which is on the bottom. There's little markings on them. Then we're going to plug our ground back in and see if it works. Hey, what do you know? I don't know if you can hear it, but there's the hum of the fuel pump. It sounds so much better than what it did sound like. We're going to see if there's any leaks. Alright, so we're checking over here for pump 2. There's no leaks. It's kind of got a loud hum to it. I don't know if that's power supply. To be honest, I could probably run a gauge thicker or 2 wire to this pump, and probably should do that. But as long as it's not crapping out on us, I think we're gonna be good. For now, this is kind of just a preemptive thing. I'm gonna run a thicker gauge on this from the relay and to the relay. So, but everything's not leaking, so we're good to go. I just lost the screw down there. That's going to be fun to find. But I will say, one thing I noticed is that by the time you get your AN fittings back on, this little cover doesn't like to fit. You're just going to kind of have to bend it to fit. Hammers work pretty great. It's thin metal, so it bends and it's forgiving, but it's not going to seal like it did with the factory fitment. It just won't. And I had to cut it. I cut a notch out for all my wires to fit in, and you want to tape that and make sure, which I need to do again, I guess. My tapes come off to make sure that nothing bad happens.